Take a quick roll call. Holly Bem?
Here.
Robert Kulikowski? Absent. I think he sent me a note saying he wasn't going to be here. Ronald Candro. I'm sorry, Aaron Levitt-Smith.
Here.
Ronald Candro, absent. Alan Needham?
Here.
William Rice, here. Elizabeth Burt?
Here.
Mark Drake, absent. Gary Lungarini, absent. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, Elizabeth, I'd like to ask you to assume a full seat tonight. Very good. Okay. So we don't have a whole lot of items on the agenda, so work through those quickly. First is review and potential approval of the minutes of the May 9th Planning Commission meeting. So Mr. Kulikowski is in here. Aaron, ready?
Oh, no.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
I already read through.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so that's fine.
Okay, so these are the minutes of May 9th.
Yes. So, page 1.
No comment.
No comments. Page 2.
No comments from me.
No. Is there a motion to?
I'm so move.
So we have a motion to approve as submitted.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Adam. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Elizabeth Burt abstains. Thank you, everyone. Okay. We have no pending applications. We have no pending public hearings. From the agenda, I see we have no new business. No, okay, no new applications, no referrals. And that leads us right into the meat of tonight's meeting, which will be discussion on the draft POCD. And if everyone remembers, let's see, we stopped on page 75. Mr. Tralder, good evening.
Good evening.
So we're going to start with promote economic development. What say you? Or what say any of the commissioners?
On page 75, did we talk about, is that the old Hartford? What is that building? Down in the corner. Where is it? Oh, is that, okay. All right, because
Dating special machine.
Could be. I walk by there all the time. Could be.
Give me a better picture.
no, I just wanted, okay, that's all.
I think you're right.
Any comments on page 76?
I like the reference to net fiscal impact.
Which one's that, Alan?
Where is it?
Second
Oh, yeah,
paragraph,
second,
third
yeah.
sentence, fourth sentence. That's
Yeah.
an important thing to think about, an important concept.
You want it in bold?
No, it's there. I'm just pleased it's included.
Could we go back to 75 for a
Absolutely.
minute? I'm sorry. Just in the overview there, the second sentence, enhance the community by adding new jobs, diversifying land use. What do we mean exactly by diversifying land use? Develop farms, put commercial in residential areas? What do we mean by that? And is that actually what we want to do?
Isn't that, I don't know, I took that, because that's the overarching, is that then you go to this and explains it more? I don't, but that's how I kind of read that.
How do you see it, Glenn?
Well, I think that's a good observation. I think that oftentimes the three main reasons communities want to promote economic development is employment, jobs for people, goods and services, so that we can buy the quart of milk when we need it type of thing, or get other services, and the third is the tax base. So I actually think that's embodied in the purpose, the goal statement on the next page, and I think rather than having unclear language, why don't we just say those three things and reiterate it right there in the purpose statement. So adding new jobs, providing for goods and services, and by increasing the grand list.
Well, she was specifically saying what we have on the overview is diversifying land use, and that's a good question.
I think the intent
He was
of the
replacing.
diversification is, in some communities, they are a complete bedroom community with no diversity. The diversity is one type of use, residential. Diversification within your land use is your residential, you have a good mix of commercial, you have a good mix of institutional, you have a good mix of industrial, and you have diversification within all of the land uses. It's not, it's broad reaching. It's not talking about diversification in a residential zone where you add industrial and commercial and everything. It's diversity. It's what makes a community.
So was a proposal to change the wording though? That's what Elizabeth said when I was asking.
I think it does make sense to reiterate what we got in the
Yeah,
goal
okay.
statement there, and so I would just take out the diversifying land use because it's an unclear statement. We have to spend a lot more words.
And to say goods and services,
Yep.
okay. I'm with that.
So what did you end up with? Providing goods and services?
Providing for goods and services, because we, as a municipality, don't actually provide them, but the businesses that come into.
But does that answer your question, Elizabeth? Like,
Yes,
do you-
yes, it
Yeah,
does.
It does, so you
When
don't
I
mind
read
taking
it-
that out?
Yeah, because when I read it, and I think a general public reading it, diversifying land use, I think people would think of undeveloped land and developing it. So I think it doesn't get what
That's actually the sentence.
I like what Jamie said.
2007.
I just
So
don't know
think
if
it's-
people who weren't professionals would know that that's what it meant, Jamie.
Right. So I think
I like what you
providing
said.
goods and services works really well.
We gotta,
there.
Yeah, we got
we're moving on. It's late already.
Just for
Let's
clarity,
move on.
what was you
I didn't mean to
Enhances
belabor
the community by
people,
adding
sorry.
new jobs, providing for goods and services, and by increasing the grand list.
Okay.
So Glenn, could you just explain a little bit on page 77, the bar chart?
Yep.
Okay, how do we interpret that graphic?
Well, I think,
To the percent.
Yeah, okay,
It
so,
refers to the chart above it.
it does. And so the question in a sense, are there too many dimensions in this chart? So in my desire to be fully explanatory of all of the results, I tried to present all of the survey responses both in the table format and in the chart format. So you could look at this, if you're visual, you look at the picture, and if you're number, you look at the chart. This could be a guide for us, is that people feel that we have too few small retail stores or shops, and maybe it's either about right, or maybe we need some more. So I think
I think showing you both ways works fine.
Yeah. One thing that comes out with the red is that nobody thinks we have too much of it,
not even the large retail store.
which has 9%, which is more than anything else.
Oh, we don't have any, do we?
Yeah, some of us wanted a Target.
So would our retail
surprised
stores
you.
be our grocery stores?
Best Buy.
No, they said not, okay.
Yes, that
Nobody
would be
thinks we have.
What would be our large retail stores?
Super
Groceries?
Stop.
super, yeah.
But that's not in
But
Simsbury.
they
Yes,
don't
we have
want
one.
it.
We have one of those.
Okay.
We have just the right amount.
Mr. Chairman, just so you're aware, on page 76, Glenn and I talked about some modest changes to some language. I'll just give you a couple examples of them. At the first paragraph at the top, where it says business development can help address this, we talked about defining that as not just business development, but commercial, industrial, and business. It's not just office, it's diversity within that mix. And then just simple things like there was mention of a highly educated workforce. We're also highly educated and skilled workforce. It's not just about education. We do have technological capabilities that may not be college educated, but are well-skilled workers. Excellent schools, mentioned the fact private and public, and a plug for we are nationally ranked. We don't lose sight of that. And again, I have a few wordsmithy things like that that don't affect the overall nature and the day. I don't want to bog down in the minutiae of that.
How about that last bullet item? Competitive cost of living, or maybe even lower, when compared to other regions of the country where these companies want to be.
Where?
I have,
Oh, we're cheaper than Boston.
Well, I think
Connecticut has the highest tax burden in the country.
tax burden and cost of living are slightly different, though.
Yeah.
So
A lot of people move here
this
from Boston.
comment came in through the comment and survey process that we had run back in the fall through the winter time or whatever. I think the gentleman that provided this information, which I thought was really sort of interesting to add in here, was from the Economic Development Commission. And this information here I took to mean places like New York City, New Jersey, and California are places that some of the higher tech companies that we would hope to attract and would be attracted to us are higher cost places. So if you compare it to, Alabama, Mississippi, we're not doing so well. Compared to some of the other places where high technology and other companies want to be, we could be considered competitive. So I think we could say compared to some other regions of the country where these companies want to be.
As long as it's not speculative. If there is a basis for the comment, I'm okay with it.
I mean, I think the first 4 bullets in that list, I think, are key things. And if the 5th one suddenly gets people to kind of roll their eyes a little bit, I don't think we need it. We shouldn't beat ourselves up over this issue.
No, I think you are competitive in the round. If you're, I think to Glenn's discussion, if you owned a business in southwestern Connecticut and you're looking to relocate it, Simsbury is more cost competitive than New Canaan or Greenwich, because that CEO for his $2 million price tag in essence have any house he wants in Simsbury, and in New Canaan he's going to get an average home because the house, 1 acre house lot, is $1 million.
Well,
On the
this
low
is,
side. That's one with
state.
wetland lot.
Isn't
Good
this
lot's
suggesting
1.4.
a town-by-town comparison, not here versus another state? That's the way I look.
Well, it says other regions of the country.
So maybe you want to say
It does
state.
say other regions of the country. I tell you, being in newcomers for years, I can't tell you how many people would gloat when they came from Boston. Wow, you can't imagine the house we could get, and still put money in the bank. And
A couple of thoughts here. I think that the clause, or maybe even lower, may not be necessary.
Yeah, I think, right.
Maybe that's a good.
I think we say some other regions of the country where these communities may want to be, and I think we can just add, as Jamie pointed out, Fairfield County, Greater Boston, California, and just sort of point these out.
New York Metro.
New York Metro. These are some of the places we compete with.
What kind of
And I think
companies
now
are you
the
talking
statement
Amsterdam
makes sense.
brought us here.
Well, what companies are you talking about? These companies implies you've mentioned some kind of company, but you don't. So are we talking about
I think the sentence
car
is
manufacturing? Or are we
development that fits in with the kinds of things Simsbury has to offer. So we're a high technology, high capability workforce.
Software development.
We've got executive risk here. I mean, that's world headquarters.
So I think either you have to be more specific or just get rid of the whole point.
Why do you need to be more specific?
Well, because other regions of the country, it doesn't really apply, maybe to the state. And where these companies want to be, we don't know what companies we're talking
It
about.
applies to the country. We bring people in from all over.
What's the commission's pleasure?
Well, I think
Get
it's
rid
a
of it if you
general
want.
statement. I
Have
think
you
it's
ever been to
okay.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
I think it's okay too.
Okay, guys.
Families are
Hey,
in it?
Elizabeth,
I
Molly,
don't
we got
think-
3 okays, so we're going with
Okay.
it. Anything else on 76 or 77?
Um,
78?
78. Is that just a typo, the AABC?
Yeah. It's words automatic numbering, sometimes it's smarter than I am. So
I know what you mean.
Sometimes it's more
So Glenn, an A.
it's always more ornery.
In A, and I just want to be sure, it's, prepare,
So my
review.
notes from a conversation perhaps I had with Jamie indicate eliminate, prepare, and just start off with maintain and implement the comprehensive economic development strategy. We have it already.
Oh, okay,
So maintain and implement.
okay. And that would be within our purview.
Or someone's. Economic Development Commission.
Okay, so they're using this, okay. And again, so regularly review, it's not necessarily this, but somebody, see, I guess what I worry about is when we put these in, I think they're great, but who's going to do it and who's going to hold people's feet to the fire to do it?
So I
And where are the
think,
checks and balances? I'm not, maybe that's more for Jamie, but that's the only thing about the old POCD that I didn't, like, there were all these, and I'm like, who's doing it? Who's checking to make sure that we are? So,
I mean, I think if you, I am a big fan of implementation tables. The last one in the Simsbury plan in the very back did not indicate who had the responsibility to do it. We certainly can do that as part of this next draft. I'll take a shot at it. I think I sort of know the entities and agencies in town, and I may not always get it right. We may hear about it at our public meeting in June, and we can certainly correct it in July or even at the public hearing in the fall. But I think that the implementation in these pages would be enhanced by identifying this is EDC's job, this is Historic District.
Board of Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen, Planning Commission,
Planning
Zoning
Commission.
Commission.
where
Town
was that?
staff.
Where was that? Implementation? You said?
In the last plan, it was the old,
I'm sorry.
it was
I
in
thought
the
you-
2007. And here,
It's on 119.
yeah, so I think the idea here would be to,
Well, I'm not saying to do that. I just,
No, I like,
do you, okay,
because.
it just
let's
holds
at
people's
least-
feet to the fire. I don't know. I just feel like these are great suggestions,
well,
but I don't want them to get
The
lost.
POCD is an advisory document.
Okay.
Okay, it's not going to be a law.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be able to fine someone for
Right.
not taking action on some of these excellent ideas that we have. But if we identify who we believe should be taking the action, that takes a step closer to getting it done.
I-
And I think you have the framework in there, Glenn, because on the back page, the inside cover,
Yep.
you have all those abbreviations for the various boards and commissions and other entities.
Yep.
It's all set up for a responsibility matrix.
And Glenn has the format.
Oh, okay.
He's done it for other municipalities.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Jamie, with your changes, Glenn and Jamie, with the changes to the first A, don't both A's mean the same thing?
We could probably integrate them.
Yeah, we could probably just kill the first A because that's what we're talking
Well, we
about.
recognize we have two ways there also.
Yeah. I mean, well, but rather than renumber
Glenn
them,
wanted
just
us to
kill the
choose
first.
one.
Very clever.
I'm not that.
Okay. How about we leave the second A in and take out the first A since...
Well, I think they're different, though, aren't they?
Well, it said maintain and implement, but we already have the comprehensive, so it's review and update the comprehensive economic development strategy. One already exists, which was the
Yeah, so
purpose
here's-
at KA.
I kind of like the concept. That number one is implement, okay?
Yeah.
And number two is review and update.
Review.
Okay.
I see them as
Yeah,
different,
those are
too.
two different.
Yeah, that's all.
Well, I guess that maintain was, all right, just how about implement, and then review and update.
Oh, I see, yeah, so take out maintain.
Okay.
Down at the bottom, section C, number 2, can we just talk about that for a minute? Sure, I object to that. Can we say what we mean by mixed use? Because mixed use, I've heard it.
Ray should just
Yeah, and is that part of the glossary, too?
I didn't see it in,
Oh, okay.
but, so my point is that we always tend to think of some mix of commercial and residential. I remember some discussion prior planner. Well, it could be something else too, like industrial or something. If we mean a mix of residential and commercial, can we just say that?
Could we put it in the glossary, Alan?
Yeah, so on page 59,
Now, later, there's a discussion of it.
I have a note in the sidebar on page 59. This is now, I think, the first time it shows up in the plan. But my note here says, find where mixed-use building and mixed-use development are first used and described.
That's
In other words,
your
I'll
note.
search for the phraseology and the first
Okay,
time.
so that's
Bingo.
something even.
It could be 59, could be the first place, because that's where the comment first showed up.
Oh, interesting, okay. Would you rather do that than put it in the glossary? Do you think it's better to spell it? I don't get it.
You know, maybe do both.
It's a phrase that comes up all
Yes.
the time.
Right, so what is it?
So it's a good
Yep.
thing to put in a glossary. On the next page?
Okay.
Well, are we comfortable with the concept of look at residential areas along arterial roads that could be candidates for rezoning? That's something that's done
It says
automatically anyway.
areas, not residential.
In areas now zoned for residential use, at the very end of that sentence.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, why not? Just so you can investigate.
So this is going to follow the zoning commission. The issue ends up being, I think,
That's the scary.
at one point in time, as our discussion, if you will, as part of the plan, Jamie and I were talking about some of the challenges in the Weetog area, where at the intersection of 185 and Route 10, in terms of some of the uses and activities, and there's kind of an interspersing of commercial and residential that, you know, what's it zoned, or what could it or should it be zoned? And this might lead to some analysis of that on the part of the zoning commission, and they might tweak that.
Nervous about a misuse of a PAD. But
Well, I think it's talking about arterial roads, so we're really talking state highways there. So the whole idea is that locations along state highways can be appropriate places for residential. We have a lot of them now, but they can also be places where it can be a challenge. So the question is, what might we do?
Glenn's example, look at VTOG and you look at the car dealerships and you look across, and again, those are kind of fixed assets and they're subtle uses. They're not high volume, high traffic, but that's all zone business. That could change into something much more high volume, high traffic. If that turned into high volume, high traffic, the small single family residential homes across the street may not be compatible entirely with that, and actually converting those to some other use and using those former single family lots as a transition to protect the residential behind it. Certain areas are gonna morph or have a change over time just because of the changing economy. You can either do that internal to the site, where you look at transitional zones within the Mitchell holdings, or you look more comprehensively at the area. It just makes a suggestion to look at it in a much broader venue than in isolation.
The concept of protecting the residential behind it, how does that work? If you build commercial right on Route 10, how does that
Well, I think
protect the
what I
residential
envisioned this
behind
as was transitional uses, and so this could be lower intensity uses. I think one of the sites in town that as I look
Doesn't
at the
mean
map.
retail.
No, it doesn't.
Mixed use doesn't always mean retail.
Across the street from Ensign Bickford, we
Could be office.
have that little house that was converted into a dentist's office, right? So we put the parking and everything else in. So that clearly was a residential zone at one time. That's what all the houses, EB houses were, and it's not an inappropriate use there. So, you know, should it be residential? Should it be business? And the issue is we may look at it and say, you know what, maybe from there on, in the other properties fronting on Hot Meadow Street there, maybe it could. So I think the analysis could happen, and if the commission, the zoning commission felt that a change was desirable in a place, this language could help them do that.
I'd hate to see them just start tearing down all the old EB houses, but.
Well, I understand it, but I think the adaptive reuse of that house to an office is something that
Yeah,
I should
it
sort
is,
of...
but if we're not careful with the wording, then come the bulldozers and there's 5 Cumberland farms in a row.
But it just says
That-
investigate.
Yeah, again, that, to me, this 2 does not say that.
Yeah, that's true. It
2
opens
doesn't
the
say turn from Avon to the center of town, which is a mix of commercial, industrial, and residential. Rezone it all mixed use and allow all of these isolated independent developments to occur.
Although, I must say you gave me pause in your description, talking about it becoming a high-volume corner area of Weetag, and my whole thinking goes straight to where Bushy Hill goes into Route 44 with the big gas stations and the Staples and the...
No,
I hope we never do that to Weetag.
That is not something that I've heard as a discussion.
Not yet.
Well, there's appropriate scaled development in appropriate places, and we'll say a super stop and shop with a car dealership is potentially not an appropriate land use there. There are other higher and better uses for that. It doesn't mean that someone may not propose that someday, but I don't think
that
gives them an inroad to that.
That paragraph won't create that nor prevent it, really, if that's going to happen. It's not gonna happen.
I don't think it doesn't encourage it.
Glenn, did you say an arterial road? Is it always a state road?
That's the way it's defined when we get to the transportation section.
Right, because on the glossary I'm looking at it too, so I'm wondering what exactly you're referring to. It doesn't say state, it just says it carries large volumes of traffic.
Yeah. So I think when we get to page 103, quick question, either Mike or Jamie. I'm looking at the map on 79, and the site across from the barber shop by Henry James School, showing up here as special business zone. I don't think that's right. That was an IHC, right? That little orange site was changed, wasn't it?
It's a pad.
It is a pad.
It's a pad. It was PO before. They played.
It was, but I thought with the, so I didn't realize it was a pad. I thought
it was professional office.
I do remember that.
Sunlight Construction bought it,
Yeah.
condoed it.
And it's a pad.
PAD.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So, is there actually, there's no business use there, it's just residential,
No,
it's a
it's
PAD. so-
Check residential.
On that page, and going back to your page 59 that we just referred to, I was in here, I think, when we did the number 59, I'm not sure, maybe it was, but when we talk about investigating the future possible reuse of Ensign Bickford, one of the things that somebody brought up to me was to make sure that our town has no liability for the cleanup of over 100 years of toxic chemicals. Okay.
We're not in the chain of title. I mean, some towns actually are getting into the chain of title, because actually...
But
they don't-
that wouldn't be construed, some future person reading the
No,
POCD wouldn't say,
the way
oh,
it's
they're
configured, it's for
encouraging
the
it.
private sector to take care of.
Because that's a big bugaboo. It's probably, it may not be cleanable.
How about page 80, anything on 80?
We still have a tourism committee?
Yes.
Yeah. Some of our little committees in town are pretty hot ticket stuff. The energy folks really work at it.
I have no comments on 80.
No.
Underneath. Or 81.
On 81, where are those apartments? I don't recognize that building.
Which ones?
The
Oh,
one that says apartments.
that's the MS, or the special
Yeah, the ones up by
commercial
Walker.
crossing, out in the back.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yep.
Or a single family is just as big as the apartment.
It's hidden by the transformer.
Oh, yeah, oh, okay.
Good thing they put that extra circuit in there when they built that substation. Now they can take the solar power right into it.
Yeah, I'm sure
I was always wondering about that. I drove by them like, they have a whole circuit they're not using.
Is that right?
You might, for the older single family, you might want to put in one of the Ensign Bickford houses, which is historical and very
Yeah.
specific to Simsbury. This one is pretty
This is Simsbury Manor.
Elizabeth, that's
Well,
my
it's in the
house.
First subdivision, so.
Is it?
But no, she's right, especially since we've already said let's
The
look
older
at that
single.
arterial.
So Bill sees us driving by taking a picture.
And then you've got this monstrous single
Glenn's
family
getting
next
crazy.
to it. I can't. This is a single family?
It's called your basic McMansion.
Your McMansion?
Anything on 81?
Except I agree with, if you could find an EB house, but don't kill yourself because you got so much of it.
The only problem I have right now is that, as I explained to Jamie, I'd like to update all of the pictures, but my goal actually is to try to get the revised draft out and on the town website by the end of the week.
By the end of this week.
In other words, I'd like to have sort of at least 2 to 3 full weeks, if you will, for people to have a chance to review the plan. And if the pictures don't get updated as a result of that, we've still got plenty of time between now and September to take care of that. So in terms of critical path, it's important, but maybe not between now and
I
Friday.
can send you a JPEG of my house. It's Manson Bickford
There you
house.
go. Wonderful, thank you.
Just give
Mr.
me your
Chairman, on
email.
page 81, when there's discussion about the housing strategies and types, I had a comment here of potentially adding a statement to the point that the town finds the balance between a traditional residential community and one that encourages appropriately scaled new development that respects the traditional development patterns. Because again, as new development comes in, either under the PAD or the form-based code, you're allowing much larger buildings. And to date, we've had some developers extremely willing to respect the traditions and others who are pushing against that and saying, well, this is the style of box I build around the country, and this box goes on this lot and fits nice, doesn't it, you know, Mr. Planner? And the discussion is it may fit nice, but is it appropriately scaled and reflect the traditions of the community? And that's vernacular, scale, and density. And from our perspective, as we go to revise zoning regulations, it may help to make a statement like that in there.
I like
Okay.
that. I like that, a lot, especially the scale part.
To find a balance between a traditional residential community and one that encourages appropriately scaled new development that respects traditional development patterns.
Okay, I'm gonna get you to email it to me.
Yeah, because again, you know, whether it's in the form-based code on Iron Horse Boulevard where someone's trying to build a new community with certain density, that density should still kind of respect some of our traditional patterns of either the Ensign Bickford housing or other housing that occurred along in other historical parts of the community. In essence, an interpretation, new vernacular respecting the old.
On to 82.
I wonder if we could discuss something I was reading about the other day and see if there's a way to intertwine this. There's, in the Chicago area in particular, but in other parts of the country, there's actually a trend now to build starter homes. Less expensive, kind of designed for millennials, but I don't know why it wouldn't appeal to a lot of seniors to have a smaller, a little bit upscale, less property that you own. I don't think that's going to be around for a few years. I think to be ahead of the curve on that, if we could find some way to put this in, that it's not just a matter of old homes and McMansions and apartments and condos. There's that, for the first time, I think in a long time, we're seeing some smaller homes being built, and millennials are starting to buy them. 38% of mortgages went to millennial last year.
I think, Alan,
Surprises me.
that was somewhat of what I was trying to balance in my statement on page 81. That, can someone replicate some of the Ensign Bickford housing or Weetag style housing or Terrifield style housing on a lot close to downtown, walkable, that is dense, isn't Dorset Crossing, but respects the architectural vernacular of the community without disproportioning it.
I agree one goes with the other, but I'd like to mention that anyway, so you don't have to connect the dots so much.
Yep. So I'm looking ahead here onto page 84, and I'm thinking that recommendation 10.2 talks about a diverse housing stock.
Well, Glenn, just back on page 82, your...
Yeah, I was going to come back to 82. So I'm just trying to pick up Alan's comment here. So I think right now we've got A, B, and C, which are seem to sort of identify specific demographic groups.
Oh, B1.
Oh.
There you go.
So I think if we add the word starter homes in there, but also identify that it could also be for older people. I mean, smaller houses. Promote smaller housing for starter homes, for young people, older people, etc. So back to 82.
Back to 82 in the last paragraph, I think we've been missing two words. Multifamily developments generally result in far fewer school children per unit than single-family homes.
Okay.
I've seen people get that wrong in their zeal to advocate multifamily homes.
So I just wanted to bring to the Commission's attention, I've got a Post-it note, the third and fourth paragraphs. So during our public meetings, we were getting sort of, people were giving us pushback on about the number of apartment and other units that have been built in town and saying that it changes the character of Simsbury and they weren't in favor of it and they why was the town doing this? We had never done this before type of thing. And then the survey results came back and people did not, in the survey, express as strong an opinion and felt that the housing, in fact, wasn't a bad thing for the community overall. So I'm trying to figure out how to address this. And I put in paragraphs 3 and 4 here. So the third paragraph talks about the fact that the economy changed, that single-family housing development has slowed. In recent years, 1,200 new housing units are authorized, many in multifamily developments and some in very visible locations. And then the next paragraph, it's important to realize that these units are intended to address the changing housing needs of the community. The housing needs Simsbury had in the 70s are very different than they are today. If these housing units weren't available, people might move to other places in other communities. People have lived in Simsbury their whole lives. So I've tried to explain, if you will, what I think I got from the survey results as a way to address the concerns expressed by some people, but these words become your words, and so I want you to be comfortable with the paragraph, and if you think it should be tweaked, please let me know.
Then in paragraph 5, such housing can also provide the first step on the housing ladder for the next generation. And then he goes on, many, and I insert instead of younger people, it's really the next generation of people who need housing. Many of whom are saddled with college debt. Many of these people are attracted to Simsbury, except that residents were and once here, they may become future home buyers. So, right now there's some entry level, but it's entry level in somewhat before some of the units were built. It's entry ownership. It's not entry live in the community with other options. This is giving people a potential opportunity to live in the community, become part of the community, and it's a foot in to potentially, if you're all of a sudden with 2 or 3 children, the rental unit doesn't necessarily work. Now you're looking for that home. It may be the first lot, whether it's in Terriffill or somewhere else on a quarter acre or up behind the town hall, up a Plank Hill Road, or between here and Henry James, where there are smaller lots and slightly smaller homes, which is a stepping to some of the other units. There's movement within your housing market.
For some people, one of the objections that I get leveled at when I'm at the grocery store and people come and announce their displeasure with all the new apartment units is that they're still not affordable. That for a lot of young people, they're just, for a lot of lower income people, they're priced way out of their reach.
Well, I think the market's going to dictate. Simsbury's a very desirable community, so their new apartments, they're quite attractive.
Fortunately, we have some older stock.
Market's going to dictate sort of what happens. Picking up on what Alan had said earlier on an earlier page, we identified the phrase net fiscal impact. The last sentence on this page currently reads, at a time when Simsbury is losing its largest taxpayer, Hartford Insurance, the new housing development may replace or even increase the grand list. With your permission, I'd like to change that to say the new housing development is expected to have a positive net fiscal impact and may replace or even increase the grand list. apartment housing is economic development for Simsbury in a lot of other ways. So if our taxes are predominantly, they've been unchanged for a couple of years now, which is not the situation in other towns. We're kind of unique in this regard. And so people kind of need to realize that, I understand it's different than what you saw before, but in fact, it may in fact be supporting our tax base, et cetera. So I've tried to write this language in a way which I think reflects what I've learned through the process, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get.
So were you proposing to keep in the sentence about losing its largest taxpayer?
I was, Bill, and then say where it says, then in that sense, the new housing development, I would propose inserting is expected to have a positive net fiscal impact and then continue, may replace or even increase the grand list.
I know that the Hartford leaving and ultimately being torn down is still fresh in people's mind, but I don't know 5 or 7 years from now how pertinent that will be. I think it's a very contemporary statement.
Good observation.
It makes a lot of sense today, but it may lose some value. I know Jamie put together that beautiful presentation that showed what will happen with the tax base and the grand list, and in however many years we could exceed where we were with the Hartford, but without the other development.
Which presentation was that?
Jamie's.
Development trends, it's on our web.
Oh, okay.
Page
I need to
and
go read that. I didn't know.
So I'm just wondering, I don't know, what do you think?
Well,
I like it because it helps explain to people.
Yeah.
I tell you, I don't know about you guys, but I
Okay,
get
how about
stopped
this?
all the time and yelled at.
How about if industrial risk, is that what it's called? Executive risk. Executive risk moves out 2 years from now. It won't be captured in here.
But the building will still be there.
Maybe not.
True.
Well,
I think the dramatic thing to do about
It's
Hartford.
just an example. I mean,
Yeah.
That's what
I think
mean.
it's good to have it.
I think it's too specific, because who knows what's going to happen in 5 years?
but you could have said
Yeah,
that
but
about
this-
the old.
this
thing.
did
People
happen.
still talk about the library expansion and the high school expansion, and that was more than 10 years ago.
to me, it's a good way to explain what he's trying to explain.
Okay.
I
It's
think
an
So I
example
think
that is
maybe the thing to,
understood.
let's try this if you want. Let's go to the public meeting in June, see what we get. This is, as Holly points out, something that people have commented on. Let's see what we get for comments and pushback. And I think this page is one that people may have some comments on. Let's see what we get.
Okay.
And go from there.
But to your point, Bill, I think other aspects in here might be outdated after 10 years, which is why we're, you know what I mean? Like, we're updating some of the language from, I see your point, but because it's being written now, you could say that about the whole old POCD, because when I read it, I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. Well, it doesn't make sense now, 10 years later.
Right.
But, so you would modify in 10
Yeah.
years, do you know what I mean? But I think people, for
You're
me...
supposed to modify as you go along.
Well, that's a good point, Alan. So,
But it doesn't happen, so at least
I think it's
No,
going
but-
to happen.
well,
we,
that's
we
right.
have a plan now.
Yeah, we have a plan. That's right.
Okay, let's
No,
move
but
on.
the point.
But it does help to.
So, Jamie, are we changing that second to the last paragraph? Did you?
The couple
housing
minor,
ladder?
Jamie gave me a couple of minor tweaks to that.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything in here which changes the.
No, but I was just okay. So what you
Yeah,
were
no,
just
there are
saying.
some things Glenn and I talked about, a couple little
Okay,
wordsmiths,
all right, so you're all set with that.
So we don't want to say anything about encouraging the construction of smaller, single-family homes?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's showing up on page 84, which is,
Yeah, in fact, I was just showing Alan that on page 83, your upper left-hand corner on the telephone survey results just say that right there, that there's too few.
people are sensitive to this issue,
Yeah.
understand.
That's one of the,
The interesting thing about that survey question, it does say buyers. So apartments don't necessarily address that issue unless they turn into condominiums. But again, the issue is people are sensitive to the need for housing affordability.
and I find that interesting when you compare it to the chart when they talk about businesses. There wasn't that strong indictment, but I mean, here it's too few. It's a very strong statement.
So when you say you got different responses from the public, it wasn't really a hearing, where the public came and gave feedback, And then you're referring to the survey that people sent in. But that was two different groups, wasn't it?
No, it definitely was. But the issue, in a sense, is, I agree with Holly, that I have heard comments from people who have expressed their concern, if you will. But as I look at the survey results on page 83, the question in terms of, for example, multifamily homes, 44% feel we have just about right, 20% too few, 21% too many. So the people who are upset or concerned are probably in the 21% too many. And there's 15% who just aren't quite sure just yet. So it's very much a debatable issue in town, but it's not. At 80% it said too many.
Right.
And 20% were about right. I think we'd have a clear pushback. So
Survey again when they're all built.
I don't disagree, but I think right now, today,
Yeah, they weren't up when you first.
Yeah, I
think people will get used to
waiting
it
to
as
see.
Well, and yet on 82, it does show that on the telephone survey, you see 58% believe there's that they're concerned about the pace.
Yep.
58%, that's strong.
So 84. Where did you report?
Where'd you get?
so on 84, I got a couple of tweaks
Oh, you're adding up.
that I think 10A1 at the very top of the page. The comment that I have is to change that to read maintain residential character, period.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay? That down at the bottom, where we talked about accessory apartments, 10.2A3, it says allow, and the suggested change here is provide for appropriately scaled accessory apartments. Okay?
That's
So again, it's this concept of appropriateness and scale.
Is there a moratorium right now on ADUs?
No,
Workforce housing overlay zone.
workforce housing, that's all. There was a discussion about moratorium on accessories, but again, we're not being overrun with applications. We're in a rewrite phase of the regulations. The commission has asked us to look at scale and potentially put some limitations on the size of an accessory unit.
A question.
So if the accessory unit isn't bigger than the house, that's
So-
appropriately scaled.
When the aging elderly person is no more, what happens to these units? They become multifamily homes?
I don't know, I think Jamie is working with the zoning commission on
The way the
revisiting that.
regs are written now, they're not in-law apartments. They are accessory units to the primary residential home, which means they turn a single-family residential unit into a single-family residential unit with an accessory rentable unit, unrestricted with regards to age or time frame. The provision is it can never become an investment property from someone who lives off-site,
Right.
where they can rent both sides. It always has to be owner occupied. And that's the difference.
That's what I'm-
And if ownership changes, that the new owner has, I think, 30 days
Have to reapply.
You have to
to
re-up.
re-up.
Or it goes back to single family?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or it
So then,
goes to-
because I've seen how that turns neighborhoods that were single family
Yeah, so it's
into-
not the intent to turn a single-family neighborhood into a mix of single-family and duplex. That turns to an investment change. There's still an owner investment in the neighborhood.
So Jamie, at the Regional Planning Commission last week, Mark Brantz was a guest speaker. And he mentioned a trend that he's seen in some Connecticut towns with the accessory dwelling units where some of them are considering deed restricting the ADUs as part of the approval, which would end up making them qualify as part of the affordable housing stock.
Yes.
And he says the rationale is that these tend to be lower price point dwellings anyway, and to deed restrict it doesn't inhibit or hurt anyone financially. But,
We have discussed that.
okay.
Anything else on 84, 85? Or 86, I guess?
Okay, so 86 in the sidebar,
Yep.
that's kind of a, pet project to me. I was wondering if, rather than have it in the sidebar, can we take part of it and put it right up into C? Like a C5?
Well, I think the place to put it might be before this then.
Okay.
I think fighting pagination here just a little bit, Bill.
Yeah.
So, moving that into the main line adds sort of 2 pages, and this only takes up like half of a page. But what I would propose to do is probably move it over, the discussion of 830G over to page 83. And the reason I would put it on 83 is I think this discussion comes before the actual strategic recommendations which then follow. So, okay?
Yep. Also, relative to the 8-30G, Jamie, I think we discussed this at one time or another. There's another comment that Mark Brantz made was many towns have a regulation that, let me see, I don't know what essentially have the applicants for an 830G pay for any consultants that the town employs.
We have that ability here.
We do.
What happened and what Mark's reference to is a lot of small communities have we'll say, very limited staff. They may have a zoning enforcement officer, so when they get an 830G, they have an on-call engineer, an on-call planner, an on-call traffic. Most of those towns have what's called a fee ordinance, which puts that burden on the applicant, not just for 8-30G, but for most larger scale projects. Simsbury has an ordinance, but it allows us to be reimbursed for outside consultants, not for internal consultants.
What does it mean, allows us? We can bill them if we wish?
The way the ordinance is written is you have to, in essence, come to a contractual agreement with the applicant on who you're going to choose as a consultant and what those costs are. Those costs need to be determined up front, and they cannot exceed 10% of the estimate. It's kind of a, I don't want to say convoluted, but I'll use the term convoluted process, which can bog down in the process. In most other towns, it's we hire, you pay. You don't pay, we don't approve. Some towns require deposits up front, and most of the applicants know who the town uses as their consultants. But again, there is legislation that exists. Simsbury has taken advantage of that. It is in the book of ordinances or within the charter pages,
Okay.
within the town code that allows that. But it's,
Just making a note here when we get back to page 121 to revisit the fee ordinance. Because I think what Jamie has described as a convoluted situation is very much a convoluted situation. I think there's a lot of ways to streamline it, and I think it's an I would say fairly normal, accepted, anticipated part of a major development process. Is that it's pretty rare these days that a major development in a community doesn't get a peer review in some way, shape, or form. So if our fee ordinance isn't working quite right, sometime over the next 10 years, we should go ahead and fix that.
Also, Jamie, you're probably familiar with this, but another way to potentially increase the affordable, I'm not quite sure it's going to meet the definition, but it's called the Home Connecticut Program, 8-13.
That's the workforce, that's the incentive housing
that's the
zone,
incentive housing zone.
which ended up starting as an incentive housing because Simsbury got a state grant. It wasn't going quite the way the town anticipated, and the consultant was changing their business model. And that, I came on board and worked with the zoning commission on what became the workforce housing zone.
So that's, okay, that's
That's the
equivalent to it,
The Home Connecticut program is,
incentive housing.
and so
The
the
very
big,
best thing is to change that damn statute.
the incentive housing?
We're talking,
No, the whole
No, no, no,
830G.
we're talking 8-13 now.
Yeah, 813 is the.
And 813 in essence allows you
But you're talking about 813 as
set-
a way to deal with
incentivize a zone,
830G.
you
It's the thing
get
that's gotta
credit
be
and
redone.
payment for new units created under your incentivized housing zone.
Yeah.
And there's a process
10 out
for
of
that.
10 residents, when you describe it to them, want the change.
given the fact that the workforce housing is under a moratorium right now, does it make any sense to explain, we're going to explain 830G, does it make any sense to explain the Home Connecticut program? Because in essence, we're saying it's under review.
How about we just do something like, you know, that
You may want to, it may be advisable to mention something like Home Connecticut or some of David Fink's programs that are available.
alternative statutes to 8-30G.
I think just as we might describe the difference between a village district and a historic district, really they're two different ways of kind of dealing with the same concept, and I think the 830G program and the Home Connecticut program are two different ways of addressing housing affordability. And 830G is you react to what somebody brings to you. You don't have a lot of choice in the matter. 813, the Home Connecticut program, is a way for the town to be a little bit more proactive.
It's initiated by the town.
And the percentages are different.
Yep.
And I understand the concern over the workforce housing and how that evolved, but there's also some other sort of situations where that tool can actually perhaps work and be effective. So I think explaining the tools in the plan without taking a position on them, for example, in the workforce housing, I think explains the story to people who otherwise wouldn't be aware of these things. So I think if we're adding some pages into the housing section, explaining 830G and 813 is not a bad idea.
And then also reference to other potential housing programs available.
8-2I.
There's also just-in-time money for infrastructure costs if a developer agrees to put affordable units within his or her project, that the Department of Housing can bring money per unit created to the project. And unsuccessful to date on convincing developers to take advantage of that, because it allows, again, it's another layer of bureaucracy that some are comfortable with.
I guess my point is, you know, there's other potential avenues to explore to increase the affordable housing
So I
stock.
think my sense, Bill, is given the fact that this is an issue which can affect both commissions, both the Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission, and I'm not quite sure the sensitivities on the Zoning Commission side, that I think we sort of use the blue boxes that we've been using to explain these factually. This is what 830G says, this is what 813 says, and this is what 82I says.
Yeah.
People can, I think, start to connect the dots and understand the differences, and I think that's a huge benefit we can provide to the community is education, and I think that's a good purpose for the plan.
I'm hoping in 10 years it's not even an issue. Like I said, 10 out of 10 people, when you explain 830G, they all want it repealed.
Under
When you get elected to the legislature.
Under C2, you have this point of encouraging residential development to include low income or moderate income. Isn't there a way the town can require that?
Yes, we can.
And I know the POCD can't do it, but that would be...
There is, just as Bill described, 82I. When we say 830G, we're referring to a statute. 82I is a statute. 82I is called inclusionary zoning, and it says you or the zoning commission can adopt any rule in any form in any way you want to encourage affordable housing or require affordable housing. So some communities in Connecticut have gotten quite aggressive. And they said, listen, any subdivision, any multifamily development has to have at least 10% affordability. We are not falling behind. Because if we're just building market rate units, our percentages are getting out of whack and we're getting further and further behind. They're saying, okay, we're going to make sure that everybody's
I
providing
mean,
at least
remember, the only percentages that are behind are government finance percentages.
But we can't
I
say...
understand. I'm just telling you what the percentages
All
are.
right, so for now, we're just saying encourage. We can't say require.
Well, I think this probably falls back on the language which is in the 2007 plan. I think the Planning Commission at that time was pretty deferential to the Zoning Commission, and they weren't going to tell them what to do type of thing. So I think we had the joint meeting with zoning. I don't remember this issue in the verb coming up, but the issue would be we could suggest or look at strengthening that verb in a way that maintains positive relationships between both boards. So right now, I think if we add 82I as explaining that we can change that to require and say encourage, I think that might not be a bad approach. I mean, I think there are advantages to Simsbury. The town of New Canaan has adopted for any zoning permit issued in the town, you make an inclusionary housing fee payment, which goes into an account. They accumulated over $500,000 which they used to support the modification of their housing development, affordable housing development in town, and got themselves a moratorium out of it. So you say to yourself, wow, every little addition, every little thing that happened on a house, there was a fee paid, which was a percentage, and all of that money went in, and by the time you added it all up, it made a difference. They got a 4-year moratorium, or they're in the process of getting a 4-year moratorium on it. So I like Bill's idea. We'll use the blue boxes to explain it, and I think that verb, we can look at that verb, and it's the zoning commission's, they're going to get the responsibility for that, and we'll just have to be a little sensitive as to how directory we get.
Strong encourage.
Strong encourage, there you go.
Okay, anything else before we move off of housing? Okay, let's go to 87.
Just like to recognize we had great participation here from some people in town who are very experienced and well-versed in this area. So I think they wanted a tremendous amount of additional detail in here about how the progress that Simsbury has made on sustainability and energy issues. And I felt that the information that they provided was extremely detailed, but it was also sort of in the past. And the question for a plane is, where are we going in the future? So I tried to summarize it, and I'm looking forward to their comments, but they attended all of our meetings, and they were very helpful. So I think Simsbury is in very good shape in this area. We are forward-thinking. We're going to have the largest solar farm in New England. There's all sorts of things going on that are in this area. So it doesn't necessarily affect land use in the sense, but it does affect our future.
And as your survey points out, the residents strongly agree with this.
Just for clarity, there's a proposal for a solar farm?
You're not the siting, you're not the siting council.
Others will determine whether that facility is sited in Simsbury.
Yeah, just so the commission understands, it's not a town of Simsbury decision, this solar farm proposal.
I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
Who has the power?
decision is it?
The Connecticut Siting Council,
People who put up cell towers and all that.
power plant, cell towers.
Where's it supposed to go?
Both sides of Hoskins Road.
Which one's that?
They have right of eminent domain in our town?
No.
They're buying the land,
Oh,
developing
The
it.
state of Connecticut,
That's
the state of
the question, it's
Connecticut,
just 20.
years ago, powers of the state are given to the town. So the state passed legislation to allow towns to zone for land uses, but they held back certain permitting rights. What they held back were certain things that they know the state as a whole needs,
but they didn't want to
but
fight
at the
NIMBY.
local level,
Okay, I
may
get
be
it.
difficult to permit. So power plants, cell towers, power generation substations, and other activities like that are state siting council.
You know, render understanding.
So anything else in this chapter?
Yeah.
Okay.
My only comment is I owe Glenn a picture of 2 vehicles charging at our charging station.
Yes, there you go. Thank you.
I have to catch them, not that I'm catching them, I need to see them
So we're
during
moving on
daylight.
to 93,
Bill,
Bill.
will that come to us then?
Correct.
Okay.
So Jamie, I'm waiting for the time when I can put fuel in my truck for free.
Okay.
Go to Dunkin' Donuts and use their.
I called Lisa when I saw those things going up. I said, hey, not going to complain too much, but nobody pays for gasoline for my truck.
You just
So
need
you
to get
get
an electric car,
car.
Mr. Rice, and you can plug in at the town hall.
Or go to Dunkin' Donuts and recycle it, the oil.
They'll give you oil to put in your car?
Okay, so I'm on 91, and yeah, I made a note, solar array farms. And yeah, in my mind, I don't know if anyone else thinks of it this way, but I think I wrote down here, it's a collision of 2 principles in town. We have, everyone wants to maintain the character and sense of place, and yet there's a high percentage of people, I don't know if it's the same ones, that want to have, sustainable energy and renewable energy, and I'm interested to see what happens. We did see some opposition when there was that public informational session, primarily from abutting property owners. I know a lot of other people are very happy to see the proposal, especially, like Bob Weinstein on the Clean Energy Task Force. So it's either going to be a real feather in our cap, largest solar farm, at least in Connecticut, right?
New England.
In New England.
Potential.
Well, Bill,
It won't be for very long.
Yeah, the sidebar on 88 does show between agree and strongly agree on both these things. We're talking 84%, 86%. So,
Yeah.
I think the challenge is Bill points out, is this concept that we think that a plan is going to be the perfect roadmap for us in the future, but in fact, there can be collisions or intersections, and so here's one where we'd like to preserve farmland, we'd like to preserve character, we'd like to encourage sustainability, and all of these come together, and people say, well, I'm okay with sustainability, but, not there, So the challenge would be the plan is not necessarily always the perfect thing for all situations, but it can identify sort of some principles, and what happens then is the board or boards in town, or hopefully DPUC or others, siting council, can start to consider and understand how these relate and how to approach a particular situation. So it's not going to necessarily solve everything, but give us a framework for how to approach them. I think that's the value of the
this
plan.
land was no longer farmland anyway. If these panels don't go there, they're going to be a high density development.
It's being seeded today.
Yeah. It is, the land has been farmed the last couple of years. I mean, that's up in sort of my neck of the woods.
Oh, so that was actively farmed.
It has been, but I think the economic return for the landowner from squash, whatever they've been growing, is...
Where's the exact...
So if we look at the map, is it...
If you go up Hoskins Road,
If we look at your map...
you get to the fork,
Yeah.
parcel on both sides.
Hoskins Road, it's right here.
Well, wasn't that part of that Meadowlands?
No, Meadowwood is further up.
Further down.
So they said it's on both sides.
And it's still farmland. And this right here.
Well, it was tobacco land, but it's also to be able to revert. In terms of
Farmland.
native fertility of the soil, it's pretty well draining, so and anyway, higher economic return to the property.
Lease is 25.
Interesting.
Try to they could recite it there.
Bring your sunglasses.
So, okay, we have a lot of verbiage about energy conservation, energy efficiency, implementation of sustainable energy solutions for the town and local residents. Okay, I would argue that solar array farms fit right in there. Because of the sensitivity of it, I was wondering if we should be a little more specific or not with the solar panel array farms.
Since that's a pending issue still, I think that we've got some good performance objectives here to indicate sort of what we've accomplished and our goals for the future. And if that one is still, maybe might be resolved by September, we could add something in and maybe kind of hang back in the meantime.
How about the town's position? Is the town an advocate for putting solar panels on the old landfill? Was that a proposal or an idea?
They had a proposal to put
What, there?
about 1 megawatt.
Yep.
1 megawatt at the landfill.
And there was also one across the road across from the airport, correct? That we heard.
Single panels.
A single, so they're still doing that one.
That one's still good percent.
Okay, I'm happy with it.
So, Glenn, with water conservation, and just, well, this is fine, but
Whatever happened with that?
devise and implement a townwide conservation plan. Great idea, but yet who, would that go in the implementation? Who does it?
In cooperation with Aquarian and the Terriffill Water District. I mean, I think the primary responsibility. So what I
But who,
envision.
like, is it us, is it that, you know what I'm saying, again, who?
I understand. When it comes time to putting together, what I'm planning on doing in these tables is I'm going to add in 2 columns, one of which says leader and the other which says partners.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so the leader here is probably going to be, it's not us.
Right.
The responsibility for water conservation rests really with the water companies to try to push that issue. Here, it's probably the Conservation Commission that's going to be the ones that's going to try to coordinate that effort. It's not planning, it's not...
Right.
Who's leading the effort to write the regulation for the, was it the drought conservation, or
Conservation Commission.
there was, did it get passed?
It was moved to the selectmen.
Maybe some changes, I don't recall.
I don't know the exact status of that.
Are we talking about something different here?
Going just middle of 91, Avon Water Company also.
Oh, they do have a little
They
corner,
do
yes,
have a
they
corner.
do, yeah.
Mike pointed that out.
Thank you.
As a planning commission, we could require new developers to landscape in such a way that requires little water, so less lawn, more landscaping of trees and shrubs, particularly native, drought-resistant plants. And we could, as a planning commission, do part of that. We already require landscaping in some cases, correct?
I don't think that falls to us. If somebody wanted to do it, I would think that's more of a zoning issue. But I'm not sure we want to be that specific in a plan.
Okay. But that would
If
have
that
to
was
go
a
on
requirement,
conservation.
if that was a requirement, your community would look like it does today. It would look very different. The mansion wouldn't have green grass around it, you'd have a meadow. Your downtown areas would
Sprinklers
have
going
very different vegetation than what's there today. So again, that's, to me, that's an open-ended question that doesn't necessarily have a right or wrong answer to it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ellen. I'm not sure I want to be that specific.
Yeah, it's the Pandora's box, isn't it?
C4, Glenn, on page 91, collect and compost biodegradable material. Again, who? The town? I know, again, I love the idea.
Now, this is probably a carryover from the 2007 plan.
Right.
So, the transfer station, is that too detailed for us? Because we really do, who's going to lead that effort?
Well, at one time,
I mean, I like the idea, but is it,
Whether the community does it, there are some individuals or farmers who may do it in town. Whether they're permitted as resource reduction facilities through DEEP, or are even required to. But again, I think Glenn's approach is it's a general goal that the community or individuals within the community should potentially be encouraged to do that.
but that's not what this says, Jamie. It says Simsbury will.
Yeah, so I think what I'm going to suggest, we just add a little clause on the front that says promote efforts to collect and compost biodegradable material. So I think, we certainly would like to see it happen, but, I mean, I think the town's got higher priorities. So
Right.
Conservation Commission might take this on, figure out a way to do something with Public Works, blah, 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 blah.
But that, I like that better, because then it's, okay, so that's Simsbury, so that answers that question.
Chapter 12, we're ready to go?
I just had one comment, Mr. Chairman, on 92, and that was on C, evolution. Simsbury will. Under number 1, again, this is, to me, very global in nature. I don't know how Simsbury does that. Identify and anticipate possible future micro-level changes to temperature, climate patterns, and storm frequency or intensities before they become a threat to the community. The state just changed some of their storm water management principles and intensity of storms and some of the values associated with that, but we don't have the professional capabilities internal to address this issue. It's just, you may be very comfortable with it. But it's,
No, I think the idea, I think we can change that first line to say monitor changing temperature, climate patterns, and/or storm frequency or intensity. Because I think the challenge that we have in Connecticut is the storm frequency and intensity is changing. So subdivisions were built in the 50s, they designed the culverts for what they knew the storm intensity and frequency was at the time. It's now, what was a 100-year storm is now a 50-year storm, so they're flooding twice as much, twice as often, and a 100-year storm is bigger. So older neighborhoods are actually challenged from a drainage perspective because the storm frequency has changed. So people think that development around them is causing a problem. It's not. It's the world that's causing the problem. But it can actually gang up and create problems in whole neighborhoods. And I think that's the whole idea. Monitor what's going on here so that if we can avoid a flooding problem in the future, we can address it. Just as a couple of thoughts here really quick. As Jamie pointed out, and I think some other people have read this, almost every policy paragraph starts off and it says Simsbury will. Now, that language is active and assertive and it pushes something, and there's other situations where people may throw that back at you and say, well, you said you're going to do this. So, another community that I had occasion to work with saw the language that said that they will do this, and they asked that that language be taken out. They're okay with the policies and strategies, but that will on the front, they didn't know that they would agree with that in all situations over the next 10 years. So my question to you is, the use of will implies intent and commitment, and the elimination of it, I'm not sure it destroys the plan or weakens it tremendously, but I didn't want it to go ahead without asking you overtly, explicitly this question. Would you like to leave in Simsbury will and then the list, or just leave the header, the topic, and take out the Simsbury will part? What's your thoughts? What's your pleasure going forward on this draft?
I like the will.
I do too.
I do too.
All right, so we'll go with it, and let's, okay, good. Chapter 12?
Chapter 12, Enhanced Community Facilities.
I think the nice part is on 94, the sidebar again, where it shows the overwhelming majority of the town in all aspects agree that most of our facilities, as they stand, are fairly adequate.
Maybe you could change the public works, which is not that enhancing. Maybe do a picture of the playground or the entertainment center
We're
or
working on
something.
photos there.
Sometimes important for people to know the extent of.
The guys in the truck see me stalking them to get a picture of them. Call me into the police. I'll have to have Mike come bail me out.
You know, if you don't get an aerial view like that, you don't see how massive that operation is.
I think we can do better than that.
And then I just had a comment on the bottom of 94, the second to last bullet, which was adequate facility for police department. And Glenn and I talked about changing the terminology to evaluate the need associated with providing space for the police department.
The other thing that we talked about was a couple bullets above that. 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet in the list. It says, considering a master plan for the Simsbury Meadows site and the Performing Arts Center and parking for both. And I think, is that too specific?
My suggestion though, Glenn, is the Simsbury Meadows and the PAC are two kind of separate entities. Simsbury Meadows exists as a public facility. The PAC is a tenant within Simsbury Meadows. So, again, there is a master plan for Simsbury Meadows, and I think what potentially is pertinent is a master plan for the Performing Arts Center that resides within Simsbury Meadows.
All right, so do we want to turn that into two bullets? Or delete it?
You said there is a master plan already for the meadows?
There is a master plan for the Meadows.
So should it just be for the Performing Arts Center then? And not the Meadows?
Is
that
that
what
a
you're
tenant?
There
We
has
should-
been a master plan prepared for the Meadows. I should change the terminology.
Wait, so the
Say that again?
Simsbury Meadows, or is that area that I thought was going to be where the wind farms are, or where the solar farms are?
Simsbury Meadows goes from Drake Hill and Iron Horse all the way to Mike Gerard's property,
Oh, I see, that's
all the way
the,
to the river
of
and
which
back
the
to Water
PAC is one
Pollution Control
piece.
Authority.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The part that's
Of
fenced off
which-
now by the PAC.
All right, so my sense
PAC
is,
is a small component. You have soccer
The other
fields,
one's
playing
Meadowlands.
areas,
Right.
multi-purpose trails, hiking trails, dog park, Helen's Way as another nature
There's
trail.
no sign that says Meadowlands.
So do you want us to take
My
Simsbury Meadows
suggestion
out?
is to break them apart, or one should be subordinate to the other.
Yeah, that's that part of.
I'd like to
New Jersey
suggest we
that-
delete. First of all, we have a plan for the Simsbury Meadow area, and the second thing is the PAC's a tenant.
Okay.
So it's not really a community facility in the sense that the town doesn't have direct control over it. So
So just take it out?
I think at this point in time, it's, that type of planning should happen, but it's not really the town's. At one time it was, but it's not anymore.
So then I think that bullet should just come out. Is that?
That's what we're saying, yes.
So when PAC comes to the commission to get permission to put up a structure, are they putting it on the PAC property, or are they putting it on the Meadows site? Because it's
The
there in the
PAC,
parking lot,
If I
so.
may, Mr. Mayor, the Performing Arts Center has a contractual agreement
Right.
to use the land that the town owns. So if they are building infrastructure there, they are building infrastructure on town-owned land. So what they build, they then have to gift to the community as the owner of the land. So they're making a leasing improvement to town-owned land.
So, is that considered the Simsbury Meadows site?
Yep.
I think we're getting rid of that one bullet.
It's
So
creating
way
this
back-
much confusion at the commission level could create confusion at the town level.
So back on page 65, we have this aerial photograph of the town center. One of my notes here is we're gonna label this area out here between Iron Horse and the river as Simsbury Meadows. This is the whole area. And then we're gonna put a label down here that says Performing Arts Center in smaller font, because that's just a small part of the whole big picture. So, and I think there's other recommendations in the plan that talk about community events and activities that build a sense of community, et cetera. So I think we're gonna be addressing it there rather than particularly here.
$95, 96,
I think Jamie had a comment here on C4, to change it to read improved handicapped accessibility at town-owned facilities.
Okay.
I think the map on page 97, I think that's what's called halo lettering, isn't working. It makes it almost illegible, if you will. They put a heavy border around the letter, and it's not helping us. So I'll fix that.
page 98.
That page, I just want to, I hadn't realized that Central is directly behind us. Not having grown up here, I didn't realize it was
No,
just up the hill.
It's funny, because again, I've lived here for a number of years. Firetown Road is the one that confuses the living daylights out of me.
Because
So I feel like, because I'm turning left or right off of West Street, and I know the road does the swoop by Hot Meadow Country Club, but for some reason I think it's going west and it's going north, and it's just, I just can never, I never use the road that way. It just messes me up.
There's a big hill too, Holly.
Yeah.
Yes. Memorial Park, yeah.
Yeah. Glenn, in A1, I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
Where are we, education?
12.2?
98.
Yeah, 98, A1. I don't know, maybe I'm just getting tripped up.
No, I
on
think
what-
let's,
Yeah, especially since most of the people said we already have adequate.
yeah, but I think we get to the next 10 years. So I think the sentence gets better if we say, ensure education facilities are adequate to meet community needs.
Okay, that's,
The other,
And there's always big controversy because the school board, wants to blow millions of dollars and stuff.
the second point, though, sustained educational excellence, really isn't up to POCD, is it? That's more the quality of the education, not the facilities or the buildings.
We talked about how important it is to our sense of self, and many people are attracted here because of the quality of our school system, so it's important to local property values and other stuff. So there's probably a couple of different ways to address this. One would be to include it because it kind of permeates our overall sense of community, and the other ones are to say, well, if it's really not something that we, as a land use board, could affect, maybe it shouldn't be in here. So it's up to the commission to tell me how you'd like to.
I'd leave.
Part of your rating as a top-notch community, not only within Connecticut, but within the United States, is a direct result of investment in existing facilities, and which include the educational facilities.
But you've covered that in number one, A1. You're talking about facilities. Whereas two,
There's one thing between providing a facility and then within that facility providing an excellent education.
yeah,
You can have a great facility, and then
I agree.
that great facilities don't necessarily lead to excellent educational opportunities.
We're planning for things that are for the benefit of the town.
But rather than say
I think
support and
that-
sustain, maybe we said promote educational excellence. I mean, I think we can all get behind that concept.
Yep.
so Glenn, for B1, would you word that the same way as A1?
This was a little different in my
No,
mind.
but the way he restructured it.
Yep. Maybe recreation is something that might give a little bit compared to education. I agree, we should ensure the education facilities. Okay, but if someone had to ask me, okay, you have to make a choice, schools or recreation areas, I would say schools.
Well,
I think
it's subjective because, again, we know that the Board of Education wants to just go and throw millions of dollars at something that doesn't meet.
Holly, that's your opinion.
Okay.
Okay? My point is that I don't want the POCD to say that we must supply adequate recreation facilities. We definitely encourage. Okay, and it'd be good if we could do everything.
I think we can improve this sentence, though, if we change it to delete adequate and be provided. So in other words, the sentence could read, encourage recreation facilities to meet community needs.
That's, because
Okay.
that's how you,
Yep.
that's my point, is that.
It's slightly
it's
different than
more-
what we worded it up top, but I think
But
it
close
addresses, exactly.
Yeah,
Okay?
under other, when you get to point 2,
If I could just jump down a little bit for a second,
Sure.
Elizabeth, I just noticed that under item C, 1, 2, and 3 all use the word adequate, and I don't think that's helping us here, so I think we want fire protection, police protection, emergency medical response. Who's to decide what adequate is?
right.
So,
So you take out encourage adequate?
no,
No,
I'd
just
say
adequate.
leave encourage in, but take out adequate.
So encourage fire protection be provided to all areas?
encourage that.
I think, Glenn, go to the wording you used in B1, encourage fire protection
To all areas.
to meet community needs.
Yeah.
You know, just really shorten it up. That's what you want it to do. You want
Yeah.
it to meet the needs of the community.
Well, isn't this an ensure? I mean, isn't fire and police protection as important as education? I mean, if you went to ensure
Sure,
education, shouldn't we ensure that we have enough police and fire facilities?
I wouldn't say it's our job to ensure the police
Wait a
protection.
minute, this is not our job, that this is for the benefit of the whole town.
Simsbury will, not us. Simsbury will.
Right, good point.
So I think this one could actually work if we, the verb we used was not encourage, but provide.
Yes.
So it says,
Yep.
provide fire protection to all areas of town, provide police protection to all areas of
Yes.
town,
Yep.
provide
Yep.
correctional to all areas of town.
There you go.
And don't qualify it with a word like adequate, because
Exactly.
that's
Right,
just-
because it's the, right, what you might think is adequate, I might not.
Yep.
Oh, you want to go there? Maybe I want more than you.
So, Elizabeth, you wanted to talk about D2?
Oh, well, we had mentioned solar farm locations, and I thought somebody mentioned the former landfill as a possible location. So if that is so, we could mention it here.
I'd rather have a solar, I'm not a big solar fan, okay? I'll tell everybody that, but I'd rather have solar panels on the landfill compared to soccer fields.
Yeah. I agree. So.
I have no
then we should
objection
add
to
that?
adding solar panel farm, yeah.
Or do you want to leave it more general and just say environmental pursuit? I mean, it doesn't have to be that specific to say solar, because there might be something else, I don't know.
Including but not limited to open space and recreation.
I got a thought. First of all, I think as Bill had pointed out, the qualifier suitable on there, we probably don't need. I think that's probably a carryover from 2007 again. So what if it said, evaluate the former landfill for adaptive reuse, including open space, recreation, solar farm, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's too specific.
To evaluate, for example.
No, but I'm solar farm. I'd be the
13? After 13?
You still working on the photos, Glenn?
I will, I don't anticipate getting to them between now and Friday. But
Okay,
if there's
just,
ones that concern you, please.
No,
point them
no,
out.
you know, the other ones look like they're images from Simsbury, and the bottom right-hand corner.
It's not, I couldn't find a bus in the picture or something.
Good
But our
point.
bus goes there.
Did you look at mine?
No.
Right, picture in time. We will,
So we shall go out.
Even
for
the senior bus
canvas
would
in the
work
next few days.
before final adoption, we will,
I couldn't find one
They pull
online.
up
so-
by my place all the time.
Take
We
a
should just
picture
give them
and
a
send it
picture.
to 'em.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, our goal is to get either the commuter bus with people walking onto it on a morning,
Yeah.
you know, with,
Standing in the rain. with their-
again, river walk.
Hurricane hit us, and we'll get the Weetag bus stop as everybody's kind of huddled in the shelter.
Okay, guys, let's step it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought,
I'll try to get you one.
we have to get through this
After Getting
tonight.
off the bus.
Yeah, we
at least in the
definitely
afternoon.
I think it's gonna speed up after we've just kind of got one and a half meaty chapters, and I think it's straight sailing after that. I just want to recognize in the transportation section that we had strong support from the Bike Ped Advisory Committee throughout. They've been helpful, and they've stayed in contact with me, and they're looking forward to the meeting in June to provide us with their comments. And I'm
So did
excited.
they provide some of the text?
They did give us their comments and feedback. They said that they're really looking forward to working on the Bike Ped Master Plan, which will take this and apply it. So they want to kind of set the framework here for what they're doing.
I saw that in here.
So I think, I'm looking forward to their comments in June.
So under bicycle pedestrian transportation, perhaps we should add a paragraph that Simsbury will provide safety training for bicyclists so they know how to ride on the road with other vehicles.
Who's gonna do
You don't like the signs that say 3 feet, it's the law?
I like the sign, but too many times, you know, they're riding 3 abreast and
That's the law for the car, not for the bike.
Is that a train? I mean, who's gonna do it? I think. if
I'm gonna
we're-
leave this
That
up to
was-
is
Well,
a
no,
tag.
that's-
Liability,
Yeah,
you know,
Debbie?
one question I have is, what liability do we have when
No,
someone gets
just
hit
wait.
because the Shero is insufficient? I mean, I won't let my family go on Shero lanes because it's wishful thinking. A teenager and an iPad will kill him. You know, changing I just worry about that.
What was it, Chiro?
what do you got there,
Shero.
Alan?
We on page 100?
You know,
Yeah.
when we were talking about, 101, we were talking about bicycle pedestrian transportation.
Can we go back to 100?
Oh, you were saying, you
Yeah,
said
under-
bicycle pedestrian transportation, so I
I
just
was-
jumped into that.
I slowed us down by mistake.
Okay.
Alan has a comment on 100.
So page 100, under roadway connections,
Yep.
are we still going to mention that even though the solar farm would, I think, nix that?
Would it?
Yeah.
But we don't know if it's going to.
Short term, but
Don't.
perhaps not long term.
Yeah, you know, in,
Okay.
Solar farm is
So in
a,
20 years, we could build it, 25.
And it is the type of thing that if we're committed to it, we can communicate to the siting council to say, it is our desire
it is
to.
important to retain this in your POCD.
Okay.
yeah.
And even as part of this, they
That's a
can
good
create
answer, I get that.
an avenue that, if the circumstances were right, I don't think the town's gonna step in and build that road. So it's gonna require something else to happen on that property. I don't know that we can require them to build an access road as part of a solar
It
farm.
will require something much more intense than a solar farm for the construction of that road.
Okay.
So a developer was proposing to develop it, we would work with on connectivity. But in order to finance that road, it would be a much larger project.
Would that
It will
be a-
become an important thing in the coming years.
Would that be a town?
And we
North
haven't
End
lost-
fills up.
Staff has not lost sight of that.
Okay.
The other road connection, I'm sorry.
So what you're proposing would be a town financed jointly by the town and a developer,
No.
not the state?
What we're saying is there still should be a reference in the POCD
Right.
that long-term it is still an objective of the town
Correct.
to look at that connection as an important connection to alleviate a traffic condition that exists today.
I know that, but I'm just asking, who would fund that, the town or the state? It wouldn't be a state road, would it?
No, I think what we're suggesting is by having it in the POCD, when a private developer proposed to develop that
Right,
property,
okay.
we're gonna require him to
Okay.
do it. So if it all plays out the way that we hope, that it's
And if
not,
they
it's
wanted
gonna
to
get
come
built,
and
won't
build a
cost us
cul-de-sac,
anything.
we would say, well, that's not consistent with the POCD. Your development should look at
Yeah.
connecting to existing infrastructure.
Smart, very smart to do that.
We still have, what,
If I
25?
may,
Moving on to 101.
I just noticed that because of our discussion about, that Alan brought up on the roadway connection, there's a second one, which we had talked about, which is the southerly extension of Iron Horse through any redevelopment of the EB property to Hot Meadow Street. And it's not listed here, so I think we should add a sentence or a paragraph on page 100 to mention that.
Map.
Yeah.
I saw it on the map.
What about, if we're going to talk the future, should we investigate, look at, consider, I hear that Bloomfield is going to create some sort of a pathway, is looking at creating a possible bike path across the mountain over the old egress.
Through the, yeah,
Right.
Winbury Road.
Should we talk about that as something to have in the thought for the future? I don't think anything would materialize in the next 10 years, but as we as a town,
I defer actually to Debbie and Patty for that. I think that
I mean, like,
Winbury
just
Road.
as this northern extension has been talked about for years before.
Yeah, the Bloomfield and Simsbury received some funds in a tentative manner to connect Terraville and Bloomfield.
No, I'm referring to over the mountain, directly, not Terraville.
Okay.
So my
At Wittenberry.
knowledge.
By
At
Penwood,
Winton.
by Penwood Pond, you mean? Up that
No,
way?
you know where Wittenbury is?
Yeah, I grew up in Bloomfield. Yeah, Wittenberry, that's in the center of town.
Yeah,
right?
but Wittenbury Road is Simsbury.
Here in Simsbury.
Oh, Wittenberry Road, you're talking Bloomfield, I'm like, Wittenberry Road in Bloomfield is in the center of town.
Yeah, but if you go on Terry's Plain Road, you
Yeah.
get to the, by Swept Away Horse Farm, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
That's Wittenbury Road that goes up the hill.
There's a reason it's called Wittenberry. It was
Yeah,
the
'cause it
main
used to go
drag.
through.
Yeah,
So the issue is that most of the road in Simsbury is paved. It's when you get to the top, then you head over into Bloomfield, that it's not. So the major work on that trail would be on the Bloomfield side, not in the.
Where does that connect into Bloomfield? Up at
There's actually
Wilcox?
a right-of-way that goes all the way through, and it would eventually come out onto,
Yeah, Wilcox.
when you come down on,
The old
was it
Wil-
187?
Adams, it comes like down on Adams.
Well, that's,
Road.
but you'd have to go back up, it's like yeah.
You go south of
No, it's only
187, there's a
200
point where you get to where the
yards
road
away.
cocks and goes 30 degrees left.
Yeah, but
That's where it comes out. That's the extension of Wittenberry Road into Bloomfield.
Aaron,
If
it's
you were to
Wilcox.
continue over and go all the way
Yeah,
through.
Aaron, it's only 200.
Yeah, near
yards.
Wilcox Park.
It's
right.
only 200
yeah.
yards of road that is missing.
Yeah, but
Only
I'm just trying to see where it comes in Bloomfield. That's Wilcox Park.
It's up
Yeah.
by Adams Road.
Which is Wilcox Park, because Adams Road stops, yeah.
Anyway, for the first 250
Oh.
years of the existence of Simsbury, that was the main drag into town. That was how everyone came into town.
And Bloomfield was called Wittenberry.
Right. And that's how, well, back when Simsbury was a part of Windsor, they were cutting right through.
It actually
Yeah.
gets better. Do you know what it ties up to? When it gets to Doncaster Road in Bloomfield,
It
That's
goes
what
to
ties
Terry's
it-
Plain.
ties into Terry's
And you
Plain
can
Road.
see, it was the same road. That
Which
Terry's
is
Plain
Terry's
was
Plain
the
in
same Terry's
Simsbury.
Plain.
So it's very
Well,
convenient.
one's
Yeah, but
Terry
we're-
Plains, and the other one's Terry's Plain.
Right, Terry Plains is in Bloomfield.
I'm not playing
But
trivial
if you
for
look
Terry
at,
Simsbury.
Plains Road.
but if you look at the
But it doesn't
map,
end
it's
up
the
on
same
Doncaster,
road.
does it, Glenn?
It would,
Yeah, right at the corner of
uncompleted part of the
Doncaster-
road does. You can actually,
Doncaster and Adams.
you can walk over. My parents used to live on Hunting Ridge, so on occasion we would actually go over.
There's houses there.
Oh,
No, it's not. A Doncaster Road in
same
Adams?
hill.
Where's the firehouse on 187? You know that firehouse?
On Tuxas Avenue?
Tunxus, yeah.
Yeah,
What's that? If you're going north on 187.
Adams.
So go to the end, and it turns right.
That's not Doncaster.
Okay,
It goes to
sorry.
the
No,
end.
no, it's, what's the one at the end? Is it still Adams?
It's still Adams, but that's Wilcox, or whatever that street is.
Where it
under.
takes that
Can
90
we
degree
add-
turn?
Yes, that's
where it
right,
comes up.
Wilcox.
Is there
Okay.
any text we can add that says we ought to look or monitor or be cognizant of it? Or yeah, I'm going to show you on the satellite map.
No,
It's
we have to
amazing.
keep moving, Holly. Sorry.
Wait,
But
wait.
I understand the point.
But can we add anything to that? I mean, I do feel strongly about that because
Is
you
it
know,
under transportation or
it
is
would
it more
alleviate a lot of
recreational
traffic out of Terriffill if in the future, and not in the next 10 years, but at some time in the future, that does become a viable.
So, here's what I'm gonna suggest, page 104. Under strategy 13.2, we have this category A, which is overall. We're gonna add a new number 6, which says coordinate with adjacent communities
Okay. That's,
to extend and connect trails.
And roads.
Well, this is a pedestrian section, so I'm just gonna say trails for trails and bike.
Oh, okay. Would
well,
be-
it
would
might be a road someday. I mean, but that'd be 50 years from now.
Yeah, I don't,
You don't see that happening.
no, I think both sides would go nuts, because that would actually be a bit of a magnet for traffic.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Big time.
Well,
It's not going to be popular.
So,
Be a fourth way over the mountain.
it would be, yeah.
Yeah, that would go.
so Alan, you're gonna stand up
Well,
to
it
the
was the
town
main
meeting and
way.
present this
I mean,
one,
it
right?
was the main way over the mountain.
Yeah,
Most of the
it was
history
like-
of this town.
Okay, anything else on 100 or 101?
I was done with 104.
I know.
104.
104.
We're talking about safe and efficient circulation systems for pedestrians and bicycles. My pet bugaboo in town is the safety of the bike crossings on Route 10. They're incredibly unsafe. So I walk there with our pooch all the time. If you're walking in a northerly direction,
Which, are you particularly talking the Agway one?
yep,
Yep.
if you're walking in a northerly direction, generally northerly, the sign that says push button to cross is facing the wrong direction. So you don't see it. It's around the corner. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people, most people, stand there waiting to cross without any idea they should push the button. And if they do push the button, people driving up the road say, look at those lights, I wonder what they mean. There's not enough signage.
I know.
It's incredibly unsafe.
Where?
Yeah, it's a challenging
Right by
intersection.
Agway, I know it's a state thing, okay, but I can't believe we don't have some influence. I mean, they put the sign on,
They've made it better over the years, but I agree, there's a lot of work to do there,
it's
because,
terrible.
and the challenge sometimes too is that there are some people drivers who are very sensitive to that intersection. They see somebody, they stop, and the people behind them are not expecting it.
Yeah.
Exactly, so there isn't signage that says what the lights mean, there's no adequate warning
Probably, I agree with you, Alan, it's probably too detailed for the
Well,
plan.
I just wonder if there's some language we can hear to examine bike crossings.
Well, let's
To ensure they're safe.
generalize that, because I had the same problem with those sharrows. Right now, we call ourselves bike friendly, but we're not.
What are sharrows? Is that what?
That's the bike lane.
Is that what that?
It's in a bike lane. There's no
It's a marked lot
shoulder.
road
There's
that
a road
you
with
were
no shoulder.
sharing the travel
Oh,
lane
sharing.
with
I thought she was saying
bicycles.
sharing.
No, sharrows.
It's called a sharrow.
Oh, they are called sharrows.
Contraction of shared right-of-way. So they took the share and right-of-way and
Oh, I thought it was a share and an arrow.
The bikes that go
Sharrows.
along there.
Well, that's
Yeah.
But there.
I never knew that.
So there's no bike path. There's no shoulder. There's only roadway with a little picture on it.
Can we add something about
That's not safe.
encourage the examination of crossings to ensure they're
I'd go
safe?
along with that.
I tell you, I've been to the police chief with this, and he goes, "Yeah, we got to look at that." But that was 3 or 4 years ago.
Can we generalize it to say crossings and other,
There you go.
Hey, Chief.
and
look-
other
look at this.
bikeway, or other bikeway utilization? Because
so I think the
what are we going
bike
to do
ped
when someone
master
dies
plan.
and they sue the pants off us for this?
Well, the bike ped master plan is going to be addressing these issues. So I think these are the types of things that are going to be addressed in that. I do think that the safe crossings issue is one that should be brought up because I think the sensitivity, I know that there's other communities that are very strong strobe lights, which almost blind the traffic as a way to really get people's attention.
Also, when you cross
It requires the button be pushed.
cross in front of Ensign Bickford,
Yeah.
and there's somebody waiting to cross at the zebra crossing, they call it in England. I don't know if I know what the law is.
They have a
In
flag.
Britain, I have to give them the right of way, and in some places I don't. I don't know what it's here.
They have a traffic
Somebody had a
light.
sign up. not
They
too
have a
long.
traffic light there.
They do, but there's also the situation sometimes that I agree with Alan, that the actual law in Connecticut isn't abundantly clear.
Yeah.
When somebody puts their foot onto the zebra in England, by the way, what happens? Do they just exert a right and you have to stop? What do you do? Because people behind you don't anticipate it. So, I think
In
the
a
issue is,
New York
crosswalk,
City, you
you
get a
yield the
ticket.
right of way. Standing on that
People step
sidewalk, waiting to enter the crosswalk, and that's the issue we have in downtown. People are, it's like, you don't go in the crosswalk where they're forced to yield the right of way by law. If you stand on the sidewalk, you still, it's like you gotta get in front of the car before it's legally responsible to stop.
See, so it's
Standing on the side of the
clear.
sidewalk.
That's my point.
Isn't that why that
Not
woman
in the
got hit
crosswalk.
on a bike last year? It was one of those zebras, as you call it, and she felt, oh, okay, now I'm on it, and they'll stop, and she
So
got
you
hit.
got
Well, maybe we need
plan?
promote safety, pedestrian and bicycle safety through publications that the police department
The
can give
master
out.
plan should make
Because who
those-
knows what the law is?
The place for those will be the development of a master pedestrian and bike plan for the community.
Okay.
Attacking them individually doesn't give them
Who,
promise. The promise is that
who's gonna
plan
offer
that
that?
can encourage those.
Master plan?
I think they have an RFP out. I don't know if they, did they
Public
hire,
Works
did they hire someone?
They interviewed consultants.
interviews.
Yeah.
I don't know if the consultant's been selected yet.
So
So I think
Jamie, were
they're-
you
they're close.
suggesting that we add something?
You didn't apply.
He's saying it's best left to the
I
other.
think the master plan addresses that.
So I think what I have right now on page 104 is 2 additions. Number 1 is encourage safe crossings for bicycles and pedestrians. Number 2 is coordinate with adjacent communities to extend and connect trails and bikeways. So we're going to add those in, but I think anything else, as we start getting into specific locations, really at the bike ped.
I was just looking for a master statement to have us think about it.
I think the,
On the home stretch.
the map on, let's see, 1067, the commuter, the other transportation, walking distance, the commuter bus service. Boy, we really don't have a lot, do we?
No.
You think all those apartments will inspire a bus stop?
Which ones?
Well, then the bus will
On
have
the
to change
south
its
end?
route.
There's going to be a lot
There's a
of
bus there.
Maybe.
So years ago, the commuter lot in Avon was, remember the Avon Park Theater?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the commuter parking lot in Avon. So the bus used to actually go off 44 and sort of up that way. So, but then they converted it and built a hotel, and they moved the commuter lot to the Walmart. So
It's true.
So on 105, those black lines
still
are
pine
our
for the
only
weekend.
sidewalks in town?
those are the ones that come across on the GIS system. Are there more? There could be. Do I know where they are? No, I don't.
And this is a town without sidewalks.
That's where the plan comes in, and this is the bike ped master plan. Don't forget, I mean, my kids used to call, buses and everything else, people walk losers, right? The issue is now people are walking, they're driving to the center of town to go walking on the trail. So there's this whole paradigm shift, and we're gonna start catching up now. And this plan is gonna set the stage for it. So even these little blue circles, which are walking distances to schools, you can see that we really don't have a lot of those covered. And so the bike ped master plan is going to start to update this. So I'm actually going to suggest, if the commission is okay, on both the walking plan on 105 and the bicycle plan on 106, I'd like to put a box that says, to be updated upon completion of the bike ped master plan.
Okay.
Perfect.
So that if there's better maps available.
Will there be sidewalks along, what is it, Aspen Glen or whatever they call themselves? And
Multi-purpose trail.
Aspen Glen.
Avon Town Line,
to,
actually right now from the main entrance north, multi-purpose trail, 12 feet wide.
No connection to Avon.
No connection to Avon at this time.
Along Hop Meadow?
Yes.
How far? To the property line?
to that
500
main
feet.
entrance? That's quite a
I
ways.
wasn't here.
And to defense of the zoning commission, though the sidewalk improvements that occurred in Avon occurred after their approval.
Yeah.
And the town of Avon did not share those plans with the town of Simsbury
So it's the road to nowhere.
right now.
For now.
Yeah, clean area and improvement.
We're laying it out as a multi-purpose trail. Avon only has a 5-foot sidewalk.
It's on the other side of the tracks.
Are we up to 109 yet? The one,
Bradley.
so the note,
Oh, I've got something on, okay. On what, oh no, I'm 112.
yeah, page 112 and 113, the notes I have is these maps are too small, we're gonna go to full size on those. Got a couple pages.
But I was thinking, as Michael pointed out, it says Aquarian Water Company in the district, Terriffill Water District. Do we have to add Avon
Yep, thank you.
to there?
So on 111, Glenn, in the sidebar,
Yeah.
there's a colon at the end of the sentence, but nothing following.
Yeah, no,
Data, or whatever it's supposed to
Mike, were you gonna try to find those, or?
Yeah, I'll look again.
be. Since 2004, so Simsbury has had the following wireless telecommunication policy preferences.
You know, so at the time, there was a Simsbury resident who served on the siting council, and I met here with Bill Volker. And we worked out these policy preferences and why they were important for communities like Simsbury. And I don't know if I can locate that file anymore. So my hope would be that they were here someplace. So either find or delete.
Okay,
I'd like to
also,
keep it in, but if we can't find it, then
now that technology changes very quickly.
Right, you know what, it's some changes of this. And I'll be claiming that while he's on vacation, I'll find it.
Remember we
Since
had
he wants
the,
to post by Friday.
we had that kind of a scare not too long ago with the 5G cell towers.
I don't think that scare's over yet, but keep going.
Okay, so that, if that telecommunications policy preference doesn't reference that, it probably should, I don't know what was in it, okay?
What was this scare?
Well, there was a company that was coming in, I can't remember the name of the company.
Mobility.
Mobility. And there's the next evolution of,
5G, yeah.
of cell phone technology, and they were gonna start putting antenna towers in the right-of-way?
I
Public
laughed
right-of-way?
about this at the last meeting because
In the right-of-way?
they published a legal notice in Southington for Simsbury.
By mistake?
We're not quite
We've
sure.
been
but-
informed that that has been done in error by someone within their company.
When you say in right away, you mean next to
Like
the
after
road?
they pointed it out.
Like
In the
where,
middle
like
of
where
Hopper?
telephone poles are.
So there's different regulatory structures in Connecticut. So we have the Connecticut Siting Council, we have the Public Utility Regulatory Authority, and they divvy up their responsibilities. The Public Utility Regulatory Authority are the people who generally dealt with issues such as telephone poles, which historically in Connecticut are either owned by the electric company, Helco, for example, or the SNETCO. So they actually say on the pole, Helco or SNETCO, and you can figure out who owned the poles, and they had agreements back and forth. But now we have a situation where there's a company which is attempting to use that regulatory structure to put in towers to replace the power line poles. They are quite large, they're 120 feet. They're a 42-inch base. They are very close to the travelway, and they're huge. So the question in a sense is, their concept is to use these for the, maybe they can roll them out more easily than some of the towers with the Siting Council, and also for autonomous vehicles and other things like that. So the regulatory, is it fully resolved yet in terms of who's got regulatory authority?
Pure is going to have a ruling the first week of June.
Ooh, is that close? Okay, so they were fighting over it, and the question in a sense was, this is like an end run around the way we've been citing facilities in Connecticut. And there's a lot of people who are bent out of shape. CCM and other Connecticut Conference of Municipalities and other people are weighing in on this, but it's not resolved yet. And I think there is a pending concept for Simsbury at the corner of Hoskins and Eli.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's not pretty.
And how far apart are these 120-foot poles? I mean, they
Depends on topography and other factors.
So they could be.
I don't think anybody's got a good picture of what the rollout would be across Connecticut. I don't think that they need the height, but they are going for the height. Just as the first generation of cell phone towers were very big and far apart because they were trying to cover as much area with as few towers as they could. Now we're getting to micro cells where they're infilling with these little panel arrays and you barely even see them anymore. So this is the first rollout, but the question right now is it's falling between the cracks in terms of the regulatory structure, and that's what they're struggling with. So I agree with Bill. If we can get our hands on these telecommunication siting principles, we can get those in here and then consider modifying, changing, editing to provide guidance to the siting council.
And once again, the Siting Council is state?
It's a quasi-independent state agency. I mean, they don't.
Or they have
They do.
members from the various state commissions, like Pura.
Siting council is 5 independent people.
Appointed by the governor.
Yeah.
They're an interesting crew.
That's one.
They are appointed by the governor, but in their decision-making powers, anything that comes before them, they have regulatory referrals out to, for, in some aspects, I think it's a minimum of about 11 state agencies they have to send them to, and depending on it, it goes up from there.
Okay.
So there is some oversight.
The only other thing I had on this chapter is that on page 114, Mike contacted the Siting Council, and there's a little known provision of state law where they can ask the cell phone companies to provide their coverage maps, and we got those back. So we can put those pictures in here, which show us actually where some of the cell phone holes are, and where we have sort of decent coverage, and it actually is an indication, if you will, about
Where things might go.
and what our needs might be as a community, because I saw the number that, in terms of the number of new household connections for landlines is plummeting. That most people are just saying, I'm going cell phone. Well, that only works if you actually have service. And so the question ends up being, where do we have gaps? And if you don't have landline and you got to call 911, you really want somebody at the other end. So these are new emerging issues for communities to think about, and the maps are the first step for us to be able to have a cogent discussion about this.
So hypothetically, new developments that assume everyone moving in is going to be using cell phones may not put in landlines.
So the landlines will go in.
They'll go.
Are they required to?
They are required to go in, but
Right.
people are not
State
picking
law.
them up. They're on the street, but people don't have to.
They're, for most of it, all new development is gonna bring fiber into their building because it's, the telephone line as a fiber instrument now has
Passes.
capabilities to bring, you may not have a landline, but you may have internet service through that provider,
Cable.
cable through that provider, so there will be the, you,
3D
you know,
virtual
you're not gonna not have
My-
a connection from the pole.
My telephone
into the
service
site.
is bundled with Comcast, Infinity, whatever. Yeah, so it's, remember SNET? You ever thought SNET was ever gonna go out of business? No, it didn't see it coming, so.
Ma Bell?
Croaked long ago.
Okay, 115.
So I think we're at the point now that we can produce the future land use plan. In other words, once we have, I'm gonna get that done by Friday. I'll do my best. So I'll put draft on this. So we have enough information to recognize we're already consistent with the state. The maps we have in the earlier chapters of the plan are enough to let us know that we're consistent with the state plan of C&D and the growth management principles. In terms of implementation, the only thing I've added here on page 121 is to, under application review, is revisit the fee ordinance. I think that is an important issue.
I liked on 122A. I'll do the
120.
annual meetings.
Oh, there you go, yes. I enjoyed the meeting we had here with the zoning.
I did too.
commission. It was nice to bounce.
And it
off.
was helpful. I mean,
We've gotten positive feedback both from planning and from zoning, so
Yep.
it's not just one-sided opinion that you feel it was productive. Zoning has also thought it was productive. And everybody likes pizza.
So, but now this,
oh, pizza.
so what I'm reading here is this is saying not just planning and zoning, but get all of these boards all together at once.
I think
Single meeting?
Is that, or did I misunderstand?
it would be helpful to have these different entities together to share thoughts and ideas. I'm always amazed in my work with municipalities that sometimes the best ideas come from the strangest places. You just never see it coming, and suddenly somebody mentions something, and you put it together with something you heard at another place or read, and suddenly you got the germ of an idea and you're off and running. So I think the times we can get people together to talk about stuff and more people could be good.
Well, I'm all for it, but am I correct in 2A seems to mean all of these would be, all of these boards would come together at an annual meeting?
I guess I'd leave that up to either Lisa or others in town to figure out. Maybe this is land use boards, we'll start with that, and then we can
Right.
add other groups in later and do other things like that, so.
Too many groups.
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
then we need to reword it, because we say, hold an annual meeting of the following boards and organizations. So either we're gonna do it, or we have to reword that.
Yeah, I think let's reword it, because I think this is awfully specific.
Yeah, that's, that was my only point. I mean, I'm for it, but it seems a big change for the first year.
You could say encourage
Yeah.
annual meetings among these, you
Or
know,
just among boards and
among boards
organizations.
and organizations,
Just
yeah.
use-
Encourage it.
Or you could say the
Encourage annual
following boards and
meetings.
organizations.
among all,
Although, you know, it wouldn't be bad for us all to finally
or
get together.
all or various boards
Well,
and
you
committees.
never know. Get an agenda and someone driving.
I like the listing of them though, to be honest with you. I like the clip.
So I think I'm just going to flip that sentence around to promote continued cooperation and communication, hold an annual meeting of boards and organizations such as, and then you're off
There
and
you
running.
go.
So if the commission is okay, what I would propose to do now is make these changes. I'd probably issue two, maps and text. I'm going to issue two versions of the update. One is a red line version that you get, so you can track the changes that we've made, and everything in here that's going to go to black, except the tasks, which are red text. And then probably the black line version is the version that will get published on the town website, because other people will not have seen this plan perhaps And again, they're going to sort of see it, not with the changes highlighted, but the document sort of as it exists. And I hope to have that done by the end of the week.
Let me ask just something on 120. We say complete the updating of the zoning regulations. So they're updating them now, currently?
Jamie's working on it with the commission.
So is there like an end date for that, or that's going to be an ongoing thing?
With all of the,
Ongoing.
yeah. It's,
Let's give them a deadline, right, Elizabeth?
Well, the others
Put a
say
date
as
on it.
needed, right? So,
I have to say
All
this.
plans
Just
development
say yes.
applications.
We're gonna dock their pay if they don't finish it.
You don't want to rush that job, let me tell you something. No.
So, just one other comment that I had written down a long time ago, and this may just be because of the way that I prepare documents. Whenever I have something in red,
Yeah,
that means I need to review it. It's, in my mind, it's not final. So when I visually look at the red, I know you had a technique, right? There was a reason for,
the red was, what my thought was, is that the challenge, I think, in a plan is that we often identify what I call tasks and strategies, or policies. So a policy is something that, go west, young man, go west. Everybody know that sort of famous quote? Well, that's really a policy. That's our intention, is what we're going to do. But there's no measurement for that. And the red text in here is meant to identify a specific and discrete task that we can do, and it's got a little box to check it off. And it's red to make it jump off the page at you. So when it says, update the zoning regulations,
Check.
it's staring you in the face. You can't avoid that red text. If it goes black text, it disappears, it becomes part of the, and you don't really kind of see it. So I picked red to make it jump out. It may get a little confusing here because we're about to use red text to also indicate changes in the plan. Would you like that text to be blue? I'm trying to distinguish it in some way, shape,
okay,
or
so you're
form.
gonna redline it, right?
Yeah.
and you want to tell us somewhere in the beginning what the colors mean?
I like the red.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can blue line it.
Red makes it more urgent.
Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to blue on the next version for the tasks, and the main reason is to distinguish it from the red from the changes,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
And if you like the blue, we'll stay with blue, and if you say the blue sucks, excuse me, the blue does not work, let's go with red, we'll go back to red. Okay?
I think to make it just stand out, I think that's a good point.
Okay, let's try that.
Do green.
I like red to get attention so people make
Well,
sure
I
they
think,
do it.
I'm interested in seeing what the blue looks like too, and then
Yeah.
if we need to go back to red, it's a fairly simple change.
Or green. With green stand.
Green never really pops well on a page.
Okay.
Back in the old days, we were always dissuaded from using color because when you made a photocopy, you couldn't distinguish it from anything else anyway. But these days, most copiers are color copiers or at least grayscale, so the colors.
Most people, I think, are, the plan, there were years ago, in terms of printing a plan, that we would print, I think the most we ever printed was 250 copies of an adopted plan, so that they would have boxes to be able to hand out when people wanted them for 10 years. Nowadays, we almost don't print at the end of the completion of the job. And the issue is maybe we'll print 24 copies for the commission, zoning commission, board of selectmen, or some other ceremonial people. Everybody else gets it online on the iPad. Because that's what people do these days.
As someone who does not have a copy of our current POCD, I just hope we make enough for the future boards, because it's kind of hard when you don't have one.
I'm a
Yeah.
tactile person.
Yeah.
I love to have the pages and be able to flip.
But, trying to do that
Can't do that
online,
with
it
that.
just drives me up
Doesn't
the
work.
wall, because I don't know what all the other sections are,
Yeah.
Give some copies to the library. The library can just keep them on file.
Yeah. So I'll work with Jamie on that.
Still,
We have made arrangements for the public meeting, which is Tuesday, June 13th, I believe.
Yep.
Lower floor at the library. We've got, commission is okay with this. We've got PR, I think, ready to rock and roll to send out to notify people of the meeting. And so the plan will be up and notifications will be out, again, hopefully by the end of this week. And that'll give people 2 weeks at least to be able to review the plan.
And what's the format of that
And
meeting?
then I'll, where we have the
Generally speaking,
public
what I would like to be able to do for you is to greet people at the meeting. You can introductory statement or something else, that welcome to the meeting, this is what we're working on. I would prepare a PowerPoint to kind of give an overview of what a POCD is and how our plan is laid out and the major recommendations of it. Really not go into exquisite detail, but to give people a sense of the landscape in terms of the priorities we see to be working on over the next 10 years, and then open it up for public comment and feedback. And so I would be taking notes as we
All
go
right, so
along.
you wouldn't do a page turner?
No, I would not. I think there's some people there that are going to want to make a statement and then walk out the door at 7:15 or whatever time they're done, and other people are going to kind of listen to the whole discussion or debate. I think a page turner.
No, I know. We had a hard enough time.
Not even
doing
chapter
it.
by chapter. I would give an overview of each chapter, but hopefully people will either, if they've had a chance to read it, give us specifics. I know there's people out there who will do that. And then if there's people who just say, well, hang on a second, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but in the housing section, what are you saying about all these multifamilies that we've built? And then I think I'd provide sort of a general response on your behalf. And I think your role, would be to kind of listen to what's going on and help. We would then get together in July I would tabulate the comments we received, present them to you, and then we'd go through the plan and say, do we think we need to be making changes? Are we still okay with what the language of the plan is? Because in July, my sense is we need to pull the trigger for the September public hearing day.
How are we going to publicize the meetings so you get a better turnout than you did at those meetings we had over at the school?
So there's three things that we've prepared: a press release to go into the papers, we've got a screensaver for Simsbury Community TV, and we've got an email notification that we're going to try to get out. So that the town's got Facebook or Twitter, we'll try to get that notification out for people. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd have 30 days to do this, to get the notice out and give people a chance to review, but our schedule ended up that it just didn't work out that way.
I'd like just to suggest maybe print out that screensaver and then put it in places like Fitzgerald's, Starbucks, the library.
I think
Those are the
it's,
three places I think.
did I leave the draft watermark on there, or did I take it off?
I'm sure.
I'll send an email to myself. So we'll finalize the PR tomorrow. We hadn't gotten necessarily your blessing yet on exactly what we're going to do, location, et cetera. So now that you're okay with it, we'll go. No reason to hold up.
And the release goes to what newspapers?
I think whatever the normal town protocol is.
Okay, yeah.
We have our list.
The last time, there was, for the last POCD, there was a decent crowd.
Was there?
Yeah.
There were really only 30 people if you subtracted.
Again,
No, 2007, I think.
this is a response on your initial, what they're going to view as your initial draft. It's not the public hearing on adoption. So a lot of times people miss this, we'll say interim meeting,
Right.
and then they see it when it's more prominent on the tail end of the process.
Well, will you have copies of the draft, or, I'm sorry, for that night, or should we just plan to move along? I'm just, with all the
We
changes.
will be printing up copies for you. I don't know that your copies will be printed by Friday. I will have finished it.
No, not Friday, I'm checking for the hearing.
Yeah,
Or-
this is the
or for the
information.
next
We tell you-
meeting.
I mean, the books are probably not $50 a pop, but they're not inexpensive.
Oh.
So you'll get copies, and for other people who, our goal is to get it online to them as ASAP.
Okay.
I'll talk to Jamie and Mike about the number of copies to get, and if they want a couple of copies for the library, or maybe we wait until after the July meeting, we've pulled the trigger on the
Right.
plan, and there's a couple of copies at the library, at the reference desk, for people to be able to, if they don't want to print them out or look at them at home, they can sit down and read them at the library type of thing. So we'll try to cover that base as best we can. So, I think I know what I need to do.
Well, very good. Glenn, thanks for guiding us through, and especially thank you for adhering to our schedule.
Well, we haven't fully adhered to it yet, so don't go pulling the trigger.
Well, no,
We're close, though.
We haven't slipped.
We haven't slipped, yes.
And it didn't take 5 years.
Not doing that, no. Momentum's important, yes.
Well,
So we would be on target for a July public hearing,
No.
No.
September.
Yeah, so that's our schedule, is our target, our trigger date is October 25th, something like that. So the state statutes have changed. There's the plan, if it's more than 10 years old, the town has to explain to the state when it applies for grants. And supposedly, we're ineligible. So we're not going down that road. What we're going to do is, we as a group should have 3 meetings left, if you will. So after tonight, we will have a June public informational meeting. At our normal July working session on the second Tuesday in July, I will have shared with you all of the comments received, organized by chapter or page of the plan, and we're going to go through them. I may, or depending on the nature of the comments, may or may not suggest, accept this, somebody was just venting on that, or something like that. So hopefully in one meeting we can go through, make final changes to the plan. The statutes require 65-day notice. And we may not have full 65 days between our July meeting and our September meeting, but the requirement is we get a report from the Regional Planning Agency, CROG, and also a report from the Board of Selectmen. I'm pretty sure we can get both of those within the 60-day. And then have our public hearing in September. If the comments are modest and minor, we could act that night. If the comments are significant, we can close the hearing that night and get together a week or two, a couple of weeks later to review the comments and then act. And if for whatever reason there's a huge controversy on something, we can continue the hearing to a later date and then act, but we still have time before our OPM drop dead date.
OPM's date is OPM goes by the adopted date, not the effective date. So the adopted date is October 9th, although the effective date of your plan was November 3rd, 2017. Excuse me, November 3rd, 2007.
So we have to have this done by October 9th?
That would be the
Submitted
target.
by, right?
And again,
And the funny
there is
thing,
a waiver provision within state statute that if the town in a gap of where your plan has, we'll say, expired and where you're applying for state funds, but with the budget, I'm not sure if there will be any state funds to apply for.
it's kind of a funny scenario. You gotta have, I guess, a sixth sense of humor like I do. If our drop dead date with the state is October 9, we're gonna stick it to the man and adopt it on October 10, just we were out of compliance for one day. Because I think as Jimmy points out correctly, it is the adopted day. And honestly, in that 24 hours that are we gonna apply? Either do it on Monday or wait till Wednesday, but just, we'll show them who's boss. But I think, again, the schedule is worked out that, as Bill pointed out, we should be on schedule stands.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Glenn.
So we
Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Glenn,
Give me your email.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn the meeting?
second.
Seconded by Aaron. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right.
We made it through.
I have those for that card.
Thank God for Glenn. Made it easy for us.
I can send you, see if you're interested.
So I think Ron's got to go back.
Every time I talk to him, he says,